Welcome to Resolve IBS and IBD Naturally. I'm Courtney Cowie, a nutrition therapy and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. If you are struggling with the symptoms of IBS or IBD and want to get to the root cause of your symptoms so you can take back your health through a whole person approach, this podcast is for you. Just a disclaimer that the information I'm presenting in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. You should always consult a qualified practitioner before making any changes to your health or medical regimen. That being said, let's get on with the show. So Lisa, Franz, I'm excited to have you on the podcast today. I know you and I have some similarities. You're also a nutritionist and a health coach. And when we first connected, you mentioned you're super passionate about mindset. So that's going to be the theme of today's episode. And I know you're going to have a lot of good stuff to say about that. But before we get into that topic, do you want to talk a little bit about your background, how you became a nutritionist? If you have a specific health story you want to share, that would be amazing.
Absolutely. Well, Courtney, thank you so much for having me on. I'm truly honored to be on your podcast. And yeah, like you said, I have an absolute pleasure or have an absolute passion for talking about not just mindset, but anything related to changing our body in regards to body composition, but more importantly, from the inside out and our relationship with food. So own a company called Nutrition Coaching and Life, and we do mostly focus on helping people lose body fat, gain muscle mass, and yeah, just improve their body composition and relationship with food. But as we were talking before hitting record as well, we all know that we need to look at things from a holistic perspective. And I ventured into this from my own story because I love traveling. I currently live in South America. I'm originally from Germany, and I just have a huge curiosity for exploring life. So I was always, like traveling around and being social and so on, and always felt like I needed to choose between enjoying my life and being happy in my body. And so I went through various diets like low carb, low fat, paleo, whatever, because I was just on the search, on the hunt for like what would allow me to actually live a life and have a body that I love. And none of these various diets would give me that. I would always feel restricted. I would always plan my binge or cheat weekends and just
Mm.
feel guilty day just to get back on the punishment track sort of thing. And eventually, like I literally remember standing in a food court. It was throughout my honeymoon in Thailand, and I started to cry because I had just done a hard workout, and all my body wanted was food. And I saw one food stall which had deep fried things. I saw another food stall that had stuff with like rice and other carb heavy things. Another food stall with sugary things, and I was like, I can't eat any of this. By that stage, I had placed so many food rules upon myself that I was literally like so confined in what I would allow myself to eat. And that was sort of the where I decided to do more digging because, Courtney, believe it or not, at that stage I had already gone through my exercise science and nutrition degree at university, but people were always talking about like, oh, micronutrients, the vitamins, what foods are good and bad, with no mention that they talk about how to change your body composition according to your activity level, or even just like what might work for one person might not work for another person. It was always just like, this is good, this is bad, and full stop. And it didn't really bring me anything in terms of how to apply that to my life. So at that stage, again, like I did some digging and some reading, and I came across an article, and this article was titled "How Donuts Gave Me Abs and an 80 kg Snatch." And so for those of you listening that are not familiar with Olympic weightlifting, an 80 kg heavy lift, and I was like, I want all three of these things. I want abs and I want donuts and I want to be strong. And so I read the article, and in this article, an athlete, her name is Nicole Capurzo, she basically just explained the laws of thermodynamics, and that essentially when it comes to weight gain or weight loss, it comes down to calorie balance. And even though after several years of university, no one had explained it to me in that way, and saying that, okay, yes, of course, we want to eat, 80, 90% whole foods, foods that are minimally processed or not processed at all. Yeah, but you can have 10-20% room, for some flexibility. You can work a glass of wine during date night into your calorie budget. You can have a slice of pizza when you go out with your friends. You can enjoy your niece's birthday cake without feeling guilty as long as you kind of make that fit into your budget. And for me, just learning that was so incredibly liberating and freeing that I let go of food guilt. And I was like, are you saying I can actually have a slice of bread or a piece of bread with my breakfast and I, don't need to feel bad about it? Or I can have cereal for dessert sometimes if I really want to, like it just that freedom, it lifted a huge weight off my shoulders and also made travel and being social so much easier. And from that moment on, I was like, I want to teach other people how to do that. I don't want to be just a clinical nutritionist or, work with people that are already sick. I just want to make things applicable for people so that they can life more easily through better nutrition. Because in my eyes, food should be something that brings you joy and not something that causes you even more grief. And I'm sure many of your listeners, if they have digestive issues and so on, they can relate to how much grief food can cause you or how much it can limit you potentially as well. And of course, if we have certain conditions, that is a little bit of a different story, but many of them are also linked to emotional stress, to feeling guilty or almost afraid because you have heard so many different things. One person tells you can't have that. I've literally had clients come to me, they were like, Lisa, I don't even know what water to drink anymore because this person says it needs to be alkaline. The next person says you can just have a water filter. The other person says you need to buy your Evian or whatever. Like, what are we supposed to do? It is so confusing. So very, very often now people, I just want to strip it back to the basics, really focusing on the big movers and trying to shut the or put the blinds on and too many influencers, too many like news articles or whatever, because every week we're going to hear something different and they're going to bring out another study or so that backs one thing up and another study that backs something else up. And in the end, it comes down to finding what's right for you. And that begins with knowing how much you should actually eat. So like learning how many calories you should actually eat, what kind of distribution of protein, carbs, and fats makes you feel best and then building off of that.
Yeah, I love everything you just said, Lisa. I'm thinking actually about the water thing you just shared, and I don't know if you saw this too, but like several years ago, water and drinking distilled water was kind of a big fad, and I had people asking me like regularly, "What do you think?" And this is going to be the next amazing thing that's going to fix all my health issues, and I'm like, does it need to be distilled though? Like, I definitely am a proponent of clean drinking water, and there's great for filtration systems to do that. And I do believe everyone should have a filtration system for their water, but I'm like, but those machines are expensive. And to think that's going to be like the panacea, man, that's going down a slippery slope. And you're absolutely correct. Like, there's all these like grab onto this, grab onto that silver bullet things that people are getting bombarded with all the time on social media. And I think it's coming from this desperation to want to get to the one thing, like this one big thing that they're going to finally feel explains why they're struggling with their health issue. And as you and I both know, like rarely is there one big thing. And you're absolutely right that like you have to focus on the simple low hanging fruit and the foundations of health, like macronutrient balance, you know, moving towards whole foods as much as possible, right? Like that's exactly where I start with my clients too. So like I love
It
everything you
is
said. Yeah.
to start there. And I mean to the point of the water as well. Like if people are having that debate, what water is best? Well, let's think about it. Many people struggle because they're not even drinking enough water. So let's just
Right.
focus on drinking enough water or maybe cutting out the sugary soda and replace that with diet soda. It would be, not saying that that's necessarily a good thing, but it would be better than consuming all your calories through sugar. So again, like
Mm.
we need to see like what's actually also or what can you adhere to, because if I tell you I want you to drink water instead of your sugary soda and you do that for a day or two, but then you go back to it, I would much rather you start supplementing that with diet soda, and you can actually stick with that long term, and then eventually in a year's time using that even more and just switching to actual water. But yes, we need to think about what's sustainable, and that is a really good connection to the mindset piece that we do want to talk about, because
Yeah.
many people are ambitious, and most people, if you ask them like, are you serious about your change? Do you really want to achieve your goal? They'll be like, yes, I do. I really, really do. But then a few weeks later, they're back to square one, and they themselves don't really know what brought them there. And so
Yeah.
we also need to talk about with our clients or with ourselves about like what's really holding me back. And quite often it is several things. Well, for one, about the things that we want to achieve. So throughout a weight loss process, for example, I very often hear like, oh, this is hard. Or if people go out, they say like, oh, I can't eat that. I'm on a diet. And even just that is like, okay, for me, that raises my ears a little bit, or I want to listen in more closely, because if you say, I can't have that, you're automatically associating something negative with the way that you're eating right now. And you're saying, I'm on a diet. That implies to me that you're seeing that as a short-term thing. So if we can switch that to like, hey, I'm trying to focus a bit more on my health at the moment. I've decided I'm going to eat more vegetables, so that's why I'm choosing the salad instead of the pasta or pizza today. But you guys go ahead and have your pasta. I'm happy with my salad. That's very different, because it shows the other people around you too that you're doing it from a place of love, of taking care of your body and all of that. So we really want to become very mindful of how we're speaking about food, not just for ourselves, but also if you have a family, like your kids are going to pick up on how you talk about food, how you talk about your own body. And that's another thing. Like most of us have learned various unhealthy eating habits from their moms most of the time. And like I remember that my mom was probably on a diet every year for like 3 months, and she would eat like nothing but this horrible cabbage soup and like starve herself to a smaller version of herself, just so that, then bouncing back over Christmas and gaining 20 pounds back and so on. So that's why I just thought like, okay, this is normal. This is normal. And it's also normal that you pack on another every year, because that's also what we see in our society. And so like recalibrating that to, okay, no, unfortunately, yes, it is the norm. It is what most people do nowadays. That would also mean the norm is being diabetic, the norm is being obese, the norm is uh, cardiovascular disease risk and all these things. So we need to think, we can't just do what everyone else is doing, because that will lead to exactly those results. We need to do something different. Because I also quite often hear people say after I start working with them, like, oh, Lisa, can I not just eat normal? I just want to eat what everyone else is eating or so. Well, you can, but you need to then also accept the normal results. So if you don't want to do that, we need to eat different than what is considered as normal in our Western diet, unfortunately. And the other part with the limiting beliefs quite often is that it comes out throughout or over the course of the time, especially when we're stressed. So like we just want to resort back to what's habitual to us, and our pulling us back to just what's basically automated, because it costs less time to think about what, like I'm really overwhelmed. I've had a 12-hour day at work, and now I'm supposed to grocery shop. I'm gonna just grab whatever I'm used to, what I've been grabbing for the last 10 years, instead of thinking, oh, okay, what did Lisa say again? I should probably grab some greens, and I should have some chicken here or so. So just breaking that by, again, simplifying things, and also making sure that as best as possible we can plan ahead and actually anticipate those busy days, anticipate when our comfort zone self is going to come back out and trying to pull us back. Because, yeah, it's gonna, like any kind of change is uncomfortable, and we need to actually embrace that and realize that we can't keep living identity if we want to see a different version. Literally means we need to change our identity.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was exactly what I was thinking as you were kind of like talking on that last bit there. The identity piece is so key. And I also heard you touch on planning as a tool to help people like develop and maintain behavior change. But where I really want to go actually next is the whole piece around just the words clients use and the words we use in general, right? Like kind of back to that piece where you're just like, yeah, I have to do this, or, I can't eat that, right? Versus using statements like, I get to make this choice. And,
Yeah.
instead of I'm on a diet, this is the way I eat, right? And it's almost like a non-negotiable, like this is just the way that works for me. And we could almost argue we're all on a diet, so to speak. We all have our eating patterns that are pretty set in stone for the most part. I mean, there obviously we can change them, but like most people are already like making specific choices and avoiding certain foods most of the time anyhow, right? So like it really kind of comes back to how that client is framing, I think, that health journey and where they're going from like start to finish. If you can imagine this like finish point, it's never really finished, but like that relationship with like who are they becoming as they're doing it. And so kind of the question I want to ask you, because I've seen this come up actually quite a bit in my practice. I work mostly with women. Do you work with a lot of women too,
Yeah,
Lisa?
mostly women, about 80%, I would say.
80%. Yeah, that's same for me. And I feel like this might be a little bit more women specific, but I've had a very similar conversation with many of my female clients around this sort of guilt or shame, I would even say they feel when they're choosing to do a specific therapeutic diet. It could even just be like just avoiding wheat, right? Like that might be the main food avoidance that they're choosing. And they know that they feel better when they do that. But then going out in the world, whether it's like socially at restaurants or they're at like Thanksgiving dinner at a relative's house, and they really struggle mentally around how do I show up in a way that honors who I authentically want to be and maintain this diet that I feel actually works for me and I'm okay with it when I'm by myself. But then when I'm with this context of people, I struggle to feel okay emotionally. And it's like I have to give a reason or try to adapt what I would typically do to fit in. I don't know. Do you see that in your practice as well?
Oh, I think that's such a great point that you're raising there because that can make us feel very uncomfortable. And then often people give in to quote unquote peer pressure or so, or yeah, if you don't want to be seen as the weird person. What I usually suggest in those instances is always talking to people from a place of I feel or this makes me feel. So, for example, if someone is saying to you, Lisa, are you not having any of the bread here? Or why are you eating your burger, as a lettuce wrap instead of a regular burger? And then I will be saying, I feel best if I don't have any wheat at the moment because my stomach is a bit sensitive. Or no, thank you, I don't need seconds. I feel amazing after this one portion. This was absolutely delicious. Thank you so much. But I know if I have more, then it pushes me over a little bit, or like something like that. But if you come from a place of I feel or this makes me feel, no one can argue with that. No one can be like, no, that's not true. This bread bun is not going to make you feel bloated. Like, what do they know? They don't know that. So if you come from, I feel best, or no, thank you, I feel full already, I have had enough, that's kind of like you just don't want to talk down to people and make them feel guilty for their choices. Because if they want to continue to have pizza or whatever else they're eating that you might not be able to eat right now or might choose not to eat, then you don't want to say like, oh, nobody can go out for pizza right now. So I think this is really important because we don't like the best way you can encourage other people to change with you if you want that to happen is just to lead by example of eating whole foods and also making it showing them how good you feel with them because we're like with your food changes, with your habit changes, with your movement, with eating more vegetables and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, really, really good point. And I think often we underestimate how much, I guess, stress, even just that justification places on us. And unfortunately, I guess a lot of the people listening who do struggle with IBS and etc. from time to time, they will know that stress is one of the main triggers for IBS symptoms, for bloating, for like any kind of flare up that we might have or where we just don't feel comfortable. So the more we can actually just embrace our new style of eating, embrace that it's totally fine for people to eat different. And again, if we eat normal, if we eat like everyone else, then we're going to get those results. And so we have to accept that even though our internal instinct is we just want to fit in, we want to be like no, everyone else, it's totally fine to do your own thing from time to time. And you will be surprised people accept that very quickly. And once you've told them twice or three times, the third time you're you're invited. Someone might already have a gluten-free bread ready for you because they know that that's what you enjoy the most, or they might just say like, okay, cool, let's do poke bowl instead of some tortilla wraps or something like that today because Lisa is coming and I know that she doesn't want to eat a wheat wrap or so, so they just start associating that with who you are and not in a negative way, as long as you don't talk about it in a negative way either.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting. Like I've sort of discovered in my growth journey, health-wise and just like personally, right? Like I think that people are mirrors for us, and like at the end of the day, the thing we're fearing, whether it's rejection or judgment or criticism, often comes back to our own self-criticism and our own self-judgment, which again gets back to that identity and how we relate to ourselves. And so sometimes I just think like making that reminder and like having those conversations with clients is so helpful because often they're projecting this feeling state onto the people around them when 9 times out of 10, like if I ask them the question like what's the likelihood that that fear will actually come true if you think through like this social function you're going to be at, like a lot of times they'll think about it and be like, well, yeah, probably less than 50%, right? And in the worst case scenario, if there are family members or friends that are going to go ahead and just say critical things or make you feel judged anyhow, it's a hard situation to be sure, but the reality in those cases is that that's always going back to that person's inner turmoil and struggle and toxicity, if you will, right? And unfortunately, like us showing up and becoming healthier versions of ourselves and making positive choices inevitably is going to trigger people who are more on the toxic end just because they're going to see that and it's going to make them feel their own inner judgment about their own bad choices. And that'll get kind of like, unfortunately, projected out. It's never easy, but like, I think it would be really interesting just to talk a little bit about like the whole identity piece as like mindset shift, Lisa, and like, just what you've seen or kind of some tools you've been able to use to help like women, especially, which can be very, very self-critical on ourselves, right? Like, um, start to embrace more and more this like new person they're becoming or, move in that direction of like greater self-love and greater self-acceptance and being okay with feeling different maybe from their family of origin if those folks aren't on the same health path, right? Are you struggling with chronic diarrhea or constipation and have been told by your doctor that there's either nothing wrong or that you're going to need to take a med for the rest of your life to control symptoms? What if there was another way? A way that empowered you to take back your health through a smart nutritional strategy and through running the right testing to identify true root causes. If you are ready to say yes to self empowerment and to starting the journey to real improvement in your gut health, click the link to grab my free e guide.
Oh, there's so much to talk about. So I guess to your example there also, like if you're eating out and other people do criticize you, I think I always like to remember or remind people that that moment of discomfort where someone is criticizing you is just going to last a few seconds, maybe a minute
Uh,
if they're talking for a long time, and they'll probably forget about it after a couple of minutes and just move on with their night. Whereas if you give in to their peer pressure and you eat something that makes you feel uncomfortable, you might be in physical and mental discomfort for several days to come and paying the price for like, oh, I ate something that I'm not tolerating really well, and the next day you're beating yourself up. So I just
yeah.
want to put that into perspective. And I think also that need or that desire of like, I don't want to be a bother by to people by ordering something out of the ordinary or by eating something different. That is something, yeah, as women, we usually carry, or many of us carry from childhood on because maybe we have been sort of taught of like, don't be too loud, don't be that person that's a bother to anyone, just be in the corner and don't make too much of a noise, make yourself small, maybe all these sort of things. So again, like opening up the lens there a little bit and looking closer into that of like, hey, you're allowed to take up space. You are allowed to have your own opinion. You are allowed to speak out and to be your own person. You don't need to fall in line with everyone else. That is perfectly fine. And I think the more we can embrace that, the better. And that leads me to your specific question now in terms of the identity shift. And what I really encourage people to do is like, I'm a huge fan of journaling, but not everyone likes to journal. So I think whatever method of like introspection someone resonates with is best. If you enjoy going for a walk without your phone, without headphones or anything like that, and just thinking about the person that you want to become, the goals that you have, that's a great method. If you like meditating, that's a great method. The least I always say, because I mean any form of introspection is going to require a little bit of time and often feels uncomfortable at first because we're just so used to being busy, 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 going from one thing to another. But the reality is if we make 3 to 5 minutes of time every day to just become and stay clear on who we really want to be, it helps us create such a wonderful frame for the day and set ourselves up with the right mindset to make the right choices, to have the right priorities. So yeah, if someone is super, super busy, I just say like, hey, stay under the shower maybe 3 to 5 minutes longer. That's where your kids also can't bother you and no one is going to necessarily knock on the door. Just make sure you're actually like consciously and intentionally thinking about who do I want to be today? What decisions does that higher version of myself actually make? Because yeah, like what is she gonna wear? What is she gonna say if someone at the office is gonna offer her a donut again, even though she doesn't actually want one? How is she gonna show up when she comes home at night and, cooking for her family? Like all these kinds of things, the clearer we can get on the details, the more you can also like tap into that, so to speak, throughout the course of the day. And it just makes decisions easier. So what I have found personally, like once I've become or got really clear on my values and priorities, for instance, I love going to sleep early because I also get up early. Like I wanted a few years ago, I decided, okay, I'm gonna start working out in the morning instead of in the afternoon to create more space for my work over the course of the day. So I want to be up by 5 o'clock so I can also do a little bit of reading and everything else. Well, I also want to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So what does that mean? When do I need to be in bed? That means I need to be in bed by sort of 9 o'clock, and that means I need to start winding down by 8 o'clock. So now when someone asks me, hey Lisa, you want to go out for dinner or to this party at 8:30 on Thursday, I don't have to think twice because even though I might enjoy spending time with these people, I can just say, sorry, not on Thursday. I'm happy to catch up over coffee on Saturday morning if you like. Like here's an alternative. Full stop. It's easy. Like, and
Yeah.
by now I am known as Lisa goes to sleep early. We're probably not going to invite her to the overnight thing on Saturday or that huge party. And that is just one example that trickles into everything. If you have your priority of like health is one of my priorities, it makes it easier to say no to that third night of drinking that week because I've decided my limit is only twice a week, and
Mhm.
clearly you have a cutoff. So just taking that time to really like visualize who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? Not just today, but also next year and 3 years and 5 years. And you can use that sort of strategy for anything, for financial goals, for relationship goals. I think the reason why most people don't live a life that they really love or don't kind of like reach a higher potential is because they never really get clear on what they want. They often just say like, I'm not happy. I don't really know what I don't want. Like I know I'm not happy with this. I'm not happy with that, but I don't know where else to go from here. So the unfortunate thing is that those answers don't come to us while we're driving and talking on the phone and scrolling through Instagram. It comes to us when we actually make some time for stillness.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And yeah, I'm even thinking too, I think half the battle for some people is getting to a point of emotional pain with their situation, whether it's their health is really tanked or maybe they just feel like other areas of their life aren't working. I almost feel like in my journey, I can say that was a piece of it. Like there probably already was an innate capacity to be a little bit more tuned in and reflective and intuitive and just, asking myself these internal questions throughout my life. But then on top of that, I think there came a point where it was like, wow, like this sucks, like, and then having to really feel that pain. And then that starts to get you thinking along the lines of like, if this isn't what I want, then what is it that I do want, right? Which is that next piece you were speaking to, where it starts to center you on at least spending some time contemplating, like, all right, where do I want to go now? And sometimes it's helpful to, have a coach or someone like a therapist even to work out some of those details of what that vision looks like. But I think a lot of people end up just distracting themselves endlessly
Mm.
away from their unhappiness. You probably see this a lot with the weight loss and just metabolic health folks you work with. I don't see as many of those people in my practice, but I've certainly worked with them. And I think this can be one of the biggest limiting factors is like this unconscious kind of knee-jerk reaction to like grab for Netflix or grab for the sugar or grab for whatever it is because it's the quickest, easiest way to stuff that feeling down and numb it out with something like immediately enjoyable, right?
Yeah, that whole instant gratification thing as well, or just like distracting, like you said, like not going into that hole, but the hole really is where the growth comes from. And I think so often, I mean, to your point, support is amazing if you can have the support of a coach or of a therapist or whatever. But thankfully, like, I mean, not everyone has the financial means to do that or wants to do something like that. Thankfully, there are like other groups online now, or even just curating what you're consuming online in a more specific, more targeted way is so important. Let's just say if you want to lose weight and like all you have on your Instagram is like food porn things and restaurants and whatever, that's not super conducive. Whereas if you follow people that might, disseminate motivational things or disseminate fitness things or healthier recipes or so, that actually makes a big difference because the reality is that this is our reality now. The virtual reality is a big part of our actual reality, and so what we consume that way needs to be curated well. But even better, of course, if you can find friends to talk with in regards to like, oh, hey, I'm feeling a little heavy, like now going into summer. I've just decided I'm not going to drink this month, and maybe a friend is going to say like, hey, that's awesome, I'm going to join in because I actually am struggling with that as well. And even better, of course, if you can bring your family into that. And again, not from the place of you need to be doing that with me or you need to change with me and criticizing, but just from a place of, hey guys, I just want to like talk to you about what I'm doing. I've decided I'm going to work out a little bit more often, especially with your partner, maybe saying, and Tuesday, Thursday morning is my turn, and Wednesday, Friday is your turn. Maybe on Monday we can do something together while the kids are at school, or like, like making it something where you involve the other person in. And I think sometimes we're a little bit shy to talk about like, hey, I'm not feeling happy in my body right now because sometimes yeah, either the other person doesn't want to change with you, which is totally fine, and just making sure that you tell them that, hey, that's no criticism to you. You can stay the way that you want to stay. Because sometimes I hear that like, oh, trying to lose weight, and now my partner brings home pizza, and he's like worse than ever trying to seduce me. And so first of all, if you never have that conversation with him, that you actually are trying to lose weight, then you know how you can't really blame him. And second of all, yeah, we do find that sometimes the partner tries to pull us back out of fear that, hey, if she's changing and suddenly, looking beach ready, I'm not going to be good enough anymore. So subconsciously, they sometimes try to sabotage. Again, not out of a place of malintention or so, just simply a natural instinct. And again, there it just comes down to making the other partner feel heard and seen, and basically assured that no, you're still good enough. It's just I'm on my own health journey. You can do whatever you want with your body or whatever, but this is what I'm doing. All I want is a little support in the sense of not trying to pull me down. So yeah, talking about it, communication, unfortunately not the easiest thing, but always so important.
Oh, I agree. And sometimes those types of like conflicts or challenges, if you will, between partners can be grounds for deeper growth in the relationship too. And although they're a little bit weedy to navigate, I mean, just even being able to find a middle ground where maybe if it's the woman on the health journey and he wants to be a little bit more stuck in where he's at, it could even look like, hey, I don't want you to give up pizza, but realize that's a huge like trigger for me. And when I see it, it's gonna make it harder for me to avoid it. And I really want to avoid it. So how can we work together where you could have it, but I'm not actually seeing you indulge, right? And it opens up that beautiful spot of problem solving, which I think is such a great skill for all personal relationships. And what's amazing is sometimes one person really making that personal transformation health journey can whether the person follows with, right, the partner goes with them, it'll still have that capacity to take both of them to this deeper level of understanding because they now have to go into this gray area they've never been before and have those conversations. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love it. I think that's a really good point. And exactly like you said, like problem solving and just dealing with those situations that at first seem stressful, it can actually bring you closer. And to that, I just want to give a couple of practical tips because I think it relates directly to stress in general, not just like a tricky situation with your partner, but at work or sometimes the smallest things, traffic or whatever, the news make put us in a stressed state, and our bodies don't know if we're being chased by a tiger or if we're just annoyed by traffic and someone cut us off and your heart is racing or you're anxious about something else. So I think for me, breath is something so incredibly important or such a good tool where if we just it allows us to basically down regulate and tap into our parasympathetic, so our rest and digest nervous system quickly as opposed to staying in that sympathetic high activity sort of state the whole time. And by definition, our body can't digest so well when we're not in the rest and digest system.
Mhm.
So even just taking 3 deep breaths before we eat, or it doesn't need to be before a meal, but that's even more beneficial. But let's just say someone did just cut you off in traffic and you're about to like explode and just being like, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath all the way into my belly. And there's a strategy, or there's various strategies that kind of like talk about tapping into that nervous system state very quickly. And one of them is called the physiological sigh. So
Mm.
basically, you take a very deep breath in. You feel like it's a full breath in through your nose. And once you've hit that top, you breathe in once again, just a quick one, basically filling up the lungs completely. And then you take a big, long, deep breath out through your mouth. And doing that 3 to 5 times. So a deep breath in, another quick breath in, and then a long breath out. It's meant to just activate through the vagus nerve, which basically means our rest and digest system is being activated. So that's a tool I love to use even at night, like when I lay down and I still feel my mind racing, and like doing 3 to 5 of those, it just brings me into my body, out of my head, and then I can drift off a lot easier. And you can do that before any conversation and just reminding yourself as well that, okay, how big is this problem actually? Is this going to matter in a year's time or even in a week's time? And just bringing it back to the present moment. And I think just in general, the other tool, in addition to the breath that I always like to work with, is mindfulness with everything, or more mindfulness. And for me, actually, it really just basically means more single tasking as opposed to multitasking. I think mindfulness has kind of become like this big word, and people don't sometimes don't even know what it really means or how to apply it. But if we just say like less multitasking, more single tasking. So like literally, if you're eating, just eat. Maybe listen to a wonderful podcast like Courtney's podcast here. But aside from that, don't scroll through things. Don't eat while walking or while driving and doing seven other things. And then you're surprised that you didn't even really register that you have eaten and you're still hungry. So it's to no surprise really. We want to do more single tasking, more being present, putting the phone away while we're eating. I think at least once a day, if you can, have a family meal together, 10, 20 minutes together. That I think that can't really be, I mean, it is challenging for a lot of families, but I think it can also add a lot of value to the entire family.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And that's one thing I'm very grateful for, was present in my household growing up. Like my mom was good about, she didn't love to cook, but she was pretty thrifty and mostly, made meals at home, which was great. And then we had a pretty standard time to sit down. And even with all of we did like a lot of YMCA activities growing up, me and my brothers, and it wasn't perfect. I'm sure there were times where one of us was eating later or earlier, but I do just remember thinking back, like there was kind of this set practice of all of us sitting down. And I really think that learning that, like through your family of origin, you're more likely than when you grow up and become a parent, have your own children, to repeat that pattern because that's what you're used to, right? And we do that in my household, and sometimes the older ones will push back a little bit, and after the meal, want to take a snack over to the couch or whatever. And it's like, no, no, like we've really tried to set this boundary that, like, the exception is if we have a movie night together. then people can have like popcorn or whatever on the couch, but it's like a special thing. It's not this like average thing. Because you're absolutely right. Like research shows that just the act of not eating at a table and you're doing it in front of a screen, it takes your senses out of the eating experience. The brain isn't conscious about what it's doing. The satiety signals aren't going to kick in. It just kind of dissociates from that whole eating experience, which should be a sensory,
Mm.
enjoyment based experience, right? Which kind of circles us all the way back to the beginning of this conversation where you were talking about how it's so important to enjoy the food you eat, whatever regimen you choose. We don't want to call it a diet, eating regimen you choose for yourself, right? You have to embrace it and fully like it, right? And choose it for yourself.
Yeah, totally. And I think, I mean, that is a practical takeaway that we've given there in the sense of single tasking, but also what you said about the sensory experience to enhance that even more. If we cook more at home and prepare more of our meals at home ourselves, that also adds to the sensory experience because truly, like by just ordering through DoorDash or going through your takeaway or whatever, you're
Mhm.
depriving your body of the whole like preparation, preparing the saliva, okay, I'm gonna settle in, I'm already gonna smell this, I'm touching the food. Like nowadays, a lot of kids, they don't even know what broccoli or whatever looks like in its original state. They just think it's this green stuff, but maybe like they don't know how to prepare things. So of course, not necessarily on a day-to-day basis if you don't have the time, but from time to time, involve your kids into the cooking process. You don't need to give them like a big chore or anything, but just being like, hey, let's just all make this taco bowl or whatever, burrito bowl together, and you can all chip in with the preparation of the chopping and so on, and involve them that way. But yeah, I think if we really focus on those few things, as in like eating less distracted, utilizing our breath for less stress, talking more about our physiological goals or goals in terms of who we want to become, and then layering that in with eating more whole foods, but also not fear mongering if we have something out of the ordinary from time to time, and cooking more meals at home. Like those are five things. If people do that on a consistent basis, I would guarantee you they will feel better in their body. Like honestly, and I mean we've been talking about like the foundations and not getting hung up about water, what type of water. That's I think these five things will move the needle way, way, way more than what type of water you're drinking.
Right, right. And people will dismiss this stuff. It's amazing how often I see people really want to get into the weeds. And I mean, this is a true story, very short little true story. I have a friend who one day just texted me and was like asking me about MTHFR genes and, what to do if you have them. And I'm like, well, you vape, you don't have a healthy diet. Should we really be going there? Like, I mean, again, without judgment, but just kind of like reflecting back, like that's kind of down a wormhole that like I wouldn't even consider going with a client until very, very far down the road after they're solid with the basics. And if we're still hitting a wall or we need to consider some of these more nuanced pieces of the health equation. But like, you're right. I just think it's not captivating to look at the foundations, but like truly that's the stuff that moves the needle 80% of the time, you know?
Yeah, unfortunately, we are just primed to look for like the sexy answer or a sexy supplement or your one hack of like, okay, if you fast exactly 16 hours and 32 minutes, you'll feel amazing for the rest of your life. It's not that easy, no.
No.
It really isn't.
Definitely not. And I think just a simple indicator as we're having this conversation, Lisa, is like, here's the little question you can ask yourself and like run any like behavior change by is like, is this creating more stress for you than it's worth? If the answer to this is yes, or if it's consuming like hordes and hordes of time that it shouldn't be to try to like carry this action step out, that is probably not the right place to be starting. Like yes, it is challenging to make even sometimes simple changes because we have to fight our own tendencies, but within reason, right? Like you don't want to reach for this like step 10 piece of things when we could be working at step 1 or 2, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I think that's a really good guideline actually to have like how much is it adding that much more stress, but yes, still dissecting at the same time. am I just feeling stressed because it's out of my comfort zone, or am I feeling stressed because it's like another thing to do or another chore to have? And on that note, like I often think or want to encourage people to think more about what should I have more of instead of like what do I need to cut out when it comes
Yeah.
to food. So because often we're so like, oh, I need to eat less of this and less of that. But if you just think more vegetables, more protein, you're automatically gonna eat less of the sweet stuff because you're feeling more satiated. You are usually, depending on the situation, but usually digesting better, feeling more energized because you're consuming more micronutrients. And yeah, if we shift our thinking in that way, and then outside of food, thinking more of, okay, what can I do less of, or how can I do what I'm already doing better, and what things can I cut out of my life? Because we all have plates, figuratively speaking, that are too full, or actually literally speaking also, but plates that are
Yeah.
too full. We say yes to too many commitments, where it's like, I need to go back to those priorities that I was talking about and just sort of learn to say no more often. I don't need to go to my dentist's daughter's graduation 2 weeks from now and buy her a gift and bake another cake for this cake sale or whatever. I can just say no to some things without guilt because I'm already doing enough. I am enough. And I love
Yeah,
your sign that
abs
you have right behind you there. I don't know, not many people might be
yeah.
watching this, but this is exactly it. You are enough. You're doing enough.
Exactly. Yeah, I love to have those little subliminal like messages in the background. You just never know when that's gonna like trigger the brain, right, Lisa? But no,
Yes.
I totally agree. And it's kind of like just to touch on this real quick, like the planning piece of health, right? And I think people who are inherently a little bit more type A and planning oriented get this part and they'll often figure it out for themselves. But there's a lot of people in the population that feel less stress, just free flowing with life. And that laid back nature is a positive quality. But the reality and what I've seen is that just carving out 30 minutes every week to sit down with yourself, it could be a Friday, it could be a Sunday, whatever day works best for you, in literally running through your coming up week and looking at your calendar and like, not just saying like, well, what do I have? And let me like line up all the dots here, but just running through some of those choices. It's like, do I have to do this thing? If I chose not to do this thing, what would be good about that? If I chose to do this thing, what would be good about that? And is this in alignment with like where I want to be and where I want to go? And a lot of times, if we really take that time to reflect, we'll realize like a lot of our choices are not coming from an authentic place of like, it's a like hell yes, right? Like, have you heard that term? Like, if it's not a hell
Yes,
yes, it's a hell no,
it's a
right?
no.
Like, I love that principle. It's so true to things. It's like, you don't have to take a ton of time to make some of these decisions. It's just a quick tune in. It's like, do I feel any resistance to this? If the resistance is there, probably shouldn't do it, right, Lisa?
Absolutely. I think we can, especially as women, trust our intuition so much. And that's certainly something I have had to learn in a painful way sometimes. And nowadays, I'm definitely trying to tune in more. I think, yeah, a really helpful tool there for people to just make more time ahead of time, not just when it comes to planning out your week, but also your food. And there is the saying that where people say structure creates freedom. And I truly think that's true. Like if you plan out, not saying you need to plan out every single thing you eat
Mhm.
from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. from Monday through Saturday or Sunday, but just making a rough like draft of, okay, what do I need to buy? So you can do a bulk grocery shop as opposed to running to the store 5 times throughout the week. Just what am I going to pack when I go to work because I don't want to go through the drive-through again. So that pre-planning is going to create more mental space and more time and more enjoyment throughout the week as well, even though it seems limiting at the time, perhaps.
Yeah, it's gonna save you. It's gonna save you a lot of wasted time and energy. I 100% agree. Well, this has been such a great conversation. Is there anything you want to touch on? I certainly want you to share how people can reach you if they're interested, like all the good details.
Of course. Yeah, I the last thing I want to say is just encouraging people not to settle for feeling mediocre or just being like, this is what how I've been feeling, how I've been looking for the last little while. This is my normal. And because truly I believe we can all optimize. We all have a lot of potential that we're just unfortunately often not tapping into. So if you're listening to this, you're clearly someone who wants to improve their health, who wants to learn more, and you too can achieve a change. You just need to make changes literally and do something different. So that's my encouragement. And yeah, if anyone wants to even just send me a message saying that they have listened to my conversation with Courtney, I would absolutely love that. My name on Instagram is Nutrition Coaching and Life. That's also the name of my company, the name of on our website, on LinkedIn. And I also have a podcast, and that's the Nutrition and Life podcast.
Perfect. I love it. And I'll link to all of those resources in the show notes. Well, this has been such a fun conversation. I always love when another nutritionist comes on because we can often just like riff and play off of all the similar like things we like to teach people and clients because they really work. These ideas and these tools work. And of course, there's a lot more there. Did you find this episode informative and helpful? I'd love to have you leave me a 5-star rating. Do you have questions about holistic approaches to optimizing gut health that you'd like to ask? Please leave your question or comment below, and I will be sure to address it personally or cover it in a future episode. Be sure to check the show notes for any resources mentioned in today's episode. See you next time.